Do Americans with domestic violence restraining orders against them have a constitutional right to possess a firearm? That was the question in front of the Supreme Court today and marks one of two major gun rights cases the court is hearing this term. And the justices did seem to signal what their ruling could be. But before I tell you what that is, let me just refresh your memory about this case, United States versus Rahimi. I've actually told you about it in several videos. Rahimi is Rahimi, a convicted drug dealer from Texas who had a court-ordered restraining order against him for allegedly assaulting his girlfriend. Both federal and Texas state law bans people with domestic violence restraining orders from possessing guns. Well, after that restraining order was imposed, Rahimi was involved in multiple shootings in Texas. He was indicted by a federal grand jury for possession of a firearm while under a domestic violence restraining order. But he sued, saying that federal law that restricts him from having a gun violates his Second Amendment right, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with him. The Fifth Circuit said, because of a landmark Supreme Court ruling last year that established the Bruin test, Texas's state law and the federal law that bans people with domestic violence restraining orders from possessing guns is unconstitutional because it's not consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation, which is what the Bruin test is all about. Well, today, during oral arguments, the Supreme Court justices seemed to side with the government on this one, indicating that the Second Amendment does not prevent legislatures, both state or federal, from restricting firearm possessions after some sort of court finding that a person is dangerous. But on the flip side, the justices also suggested that the government's argument that only law-abiding responsible citizens were protected under the Second Amendment was also not right. Now, as I always say, just because this is how the justices seem to lean during oral arguments today does not mean that's how they're going to rule in the end. A final ruling is scheduled in United States versus Rahimi at the end of the term in June.